Hey guys, it's Noah here from iHollywood TV, and welcome back to another episode of iHollywood TV, the TV show, where you might know our next guest from Divorce Court or her very own courtroom show titled Judge Faith. She has a new book out called Sis Don't Settle, and she's going to be talking with us about her new Oxygen Network series titled Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins. Please welcome on Skype this morning, Faith Jenkins. Hello, Judge Faith.
Hi, Noah. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Great. I'm really excited to be with you today. Excited to talk to you.
Yes, you know what? I have been a fan of yours since you had your own show, Judge Faith, and I was like, this is such a great show. You were like a new judge on TV, and I was like, man, I just love her. She tells it like it is. She gives it to you real. And of course, you know, ever since then, you've been on Divorce Court, and now you have your own show on Oxygen. So congratulations to you and your new book as well, which we'll talk about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an exciting journey, and I'm really excited about the path that I've taken. And so happy you liked that show. I loved it too. It was so fun.
Meet Judge Faith Jenkins, first in her class in law school,
It's true.
then her own practice and her own courtroom.
I've got skills.
Now she's got a new home, Divorce Court.
You know, it was a great experience. I've always sort of started my career working in divorce court in New York. And got my teeth cut in New York family courts, dealing with divorces, custody, all of those things. So very early on in my career, I started dealing with people and families and relationships. So taking this road and this path of having my own court show and then doing divorce court, it was great. But for me now, starting my own production company, executive producing my own show, starting this new show, creating this new show on Oxygen, it's been a dream of mine. I love true crime. I think it's an amazing genre of television, and I'm really excited to pursue new paths now.
Now, what's been some of the most craziest cases that you have handled on your court show?
You know, there's one that really stands out to me. It was from Judge Faith, and I had a guy who came in and he was suing to get his engagement ring back from his former fiancée. He had met her online and proposed sight unseen without ever seeing her in person. So talk about married at first sight.
What?
This is before first sight. This was engaged. Before ever setting sight on this woman. So the first time they met in person, he proposed. And it didn't work out. And
Obviously.
for purposes. And he was there because he wanted to get his engagement ring back. And for most people, you know, when you give a gift, you can't get it back. It's a gift. And by law, that person is now the rightful owner. But engagement rings are the one exception to that rule because it's given in contemplation of marriage. And so if you don't get married and the relationship doesn't work out, you can actually sue and get your engagement ring back.
Well, now let's talk about killer relationships with Faith Jenkins, which that's obviously you right here, but you're taking your hosting skills to the Oxygen Network, as you said earlier, and you're going to serve as the executive producer for the show. So tell us how this pitch came about to you and why you wanted to get involved and really share these crime stories with viewers.
Well, it's something that we can all relate to because we've all had experiences with relationships. Yep. And most of us have had experiences with relationships not working out at some point or another. So I really pulled from two different backgrounds in my career, from relationships, and you talk about the book that I just wrote, all about love and relationships, and also the criminal side. I was a criminal prosecutor in Manhattan for a number of years. And so I thought about this show because I thought it would relate to a lot of people. And then we really get into the crux of when relationships don't work out, what makes people go to the extreme where walking away is not enough, going through a breakup, although they're painful, that's not enough. What makes people go to the extreme where someone has to die?
Now, as we dive more into the series, we learn what happens and why these partners want to kill their, spouse, but what gets a partner so worked up that they end up killing them?
In the series, I think you're going to see at least one recurring theme. And that is, for a lot of these couples, on the outside looking in, people thought that things were great. But someone had a secret, Noah. And it was all about protecting that secret and not wanting that secret to be revealed. So in our very first episode with Michael Black, he didn't have another lover. He didn't have another outside person, but he had something that he thought, if it was revealed, would completely destroy the credibility that he felt he built up in his community, in his church. And so it was all about people not finding out that he had another side to him.
Now, how many relationship killers happen on a regular basis? Is it very common?
In terms of homicides happening?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's actually pretty common. Most people are killed by someone that they know. It's not strangers on the street or some random encounters. And in a lot of these cases, most of these cases that we showcase this season, women are the victims, but you do have some male victims. But in these particular cases, most of them are women. And what you will find is there's a certain pattern involved in the people in their lives, the perpetrators. There are elements of control. You're going to see elements of people with these inflated egos, red flags, as I like to call them, that were revealed over time.
Now, as I was watching the first 2 episodes, I was kind of learning more in the second episode that made me want to ask you this. Do you see more of a controlling person in a relationship being the one to do the damage and kill their partner? Is that more common?
Yes, because in the end, that's another exertion of power. Mm-hmm. When the relationship is over, it does not matter, even if we both want to go our separate ways. It's, if I can't have you, no one else can have you either. And what was really fascinating about some of these cases, Noah, some of these perpetrators had never committed crimes before. They didn't have violent backgrounds, violent past. So that's what made their extreme behavior so shocking.
911, where's your emergency?
Just got home from work and there's blood all over the bed. There's stuff all over the floor. My family's gone, my daughter, my wife weren't here.
Now, to complete the series, how did you find these cases to share with the audience, or really did the producers, directors come to you, share the cases, and then you host the show?
We had researchers, and we look for cases that we believe fall into the kind of stories that we want to tell. So in terms of the direction, we had meetings early on about what kind of cases we were looking for. And another one that stood out to me when I saw the case, Noah, was the one that we just aired this past Sunday, because that homicide took place right at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was the first case that I'd heard of where someone used the pandemic and quarantine as a cover for murder. So we also tried to find topics that were very relevant to what's happening right now in our climate and environment.
It was crazy that the person that did the killing to his wife, used COVID as this cover-up and said that she was in the hospital on a ventilator, and a lot of her friends were like, this doesn't sound like her. Is that a thing that's happening now when police are finding homicide cases when they're going in and, seeing what happened to lead to a death, and this is now an occurring thing because of COVID? They're using this as a cover-up?
Well, that was the first case that I'd heard of, Noah. But what you're seeing is, because a lot of couples are spending more time together in their homes, in closed environments, you have seen an uptick in domestic violence, in just relationship issues in general, because it's been a really stressful time for people. And you combine that with people being forced to spend more time at home than they ever have before. So what you are finding is an increase in, unfortunately, many of these cases, not necessarily using COVID as a cover up for homicide, but just in a lot of these domestic issues now coming to the surface for a lot of these couples.
Mm-hmm. Now, as so many had been working at home during this stressful time with COVID, I think we're like in our fourth wave, or I don't even know how many waves that we're even at, Judge Faith. It's just so crazy. We're like wave after wave. We're like just out in the sea waving it up, you know? I'm like, what is going on in the country? So how have you and your husband managed to, you know, not only work from home, but manage your relationship as well, and to keep it healthy and to keep everything going?
Mm-hmm. We got married a week before everything in the world shut down. So it was March 8th of 2020. And I'm looking at the time now. I can't believe it's almost 2 years. At our wedding, we really had no idea what was about to happen a week later. So I tell this story because we didn't take a big honeymoon because we had taken so much time off preparing for the wedding. We really needed to get back into work and everything happening. So we took a mini moon locally, and we got back from that mini moon, and all the grocery stores, the shelves were empty. The toilet tissue was gone, and it was just crazy. And I remember thinking, you mean to tell me I waited all this time to get married and the world is about to end a week later? So once I processed that, it was really interesting because the first 2 months of our marriage, we spent completely inside, isolated from the rest of the world, outside of being using technology to talk and see other people. And I describe it as it was almost like we were able to put noise cancellation headphones on our marriage in those early days. And we used it as a time to just get to know each other as husband and wife and build such a solid foundation. We're going to get back to our social lives soon enough, but the priority has to be just making really good decisions. You know, it's so interesting because I wrote this book on love and relationships and dating, Noah, and I talk about how I went through all these different phases of dating. When I started dating, there was no Google. You couldn't Google people and see what they were about. And, you know, then Match.com and some of the other sites came, and then social media came. Well, now you can really get an insight into what's happening in people's lives, somewhat a highly filtered version, I would say, depends on what people want to show. But I went through all of these stages of dating. And then now, you know, the newest experience is people who are having to do it in the midst of this pandemic.
People on OnlyFans. Judge Faith, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of OnlyFans. That's what I'm going to say, okay? Mm-hmm. Oh.
I've heard of OnlyFans. I've had a few cases dealing with it, but it's interesting. It's just an interesting phenomenon now with the social media technology and how it's impacted them.
It is. Keep your kids safe. Watch them on their monitors and their tablets and know what they're looking at, you know? That's a real big thing, I think, with parenting these days. You know, it's great to give your kids a little screen time, but don't give them too much because they don't need screen time, 24 hours, you know?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, now I do want to bring it back to the second episode of Killer Relationships. Cases that end up being cross-country during COVID, like we, saw in the second episode. How difficult is it to get to that point of location to find, gather, and secure evidence?
In the second episode of the show, that's one of my favorite parts about this series is the level of detail in the investigation you get to see law enforcement engage in order to catch these perpetrators. In the second episode, they were able to team up with other police departments in other jurisdictions and work with them in order to keep an eye on the husband who had, initially they said he was fleeing, but at that time he wasn't under arrest. He was just being questioned, so he was actually free to go wherever he wanted to go. But using law enforcement and technology and all of these things to be able to track him during that time period, that's what really allowed them to be able to find him and put hands on him when they needed to.
Now, Judge Faith, before we have to go, I do want to point out about your new book. It's phenomenal. I think so many young women and men will fall in love with this book. It's titled Sis, Don't Settle. First off, tell us what made you want to write this book and what made you want to name it that title.
Well, because when I started dating, I was in New York, and I was single throughout my 20s, throughout my 30s, and people started asking me, well, we don't understand. You have so much going on in your life. Why aren't you married? And the questioning started to come for me. I was okay living my life. I was really living my best life in New York and seeing shows and theater and great friends. But it was like that question was a reminder, or some people use it as a reminder that there was something missing or something off in my life. And there wasn't. So I decided to write the book because I got married after I turned 40 years old to my husband, who is an amazing and incredible individual. And I think about if I had succumbed to the pressure earlier in my life to get married just because people thought that I needed to meet an arbitrary timeline, or because they thought that it was just something that I was supposed to do at that point in my life. But I stayed single until I truly believed that I met the right person that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And during that time period, I worked on myself. I dated, I made mistakes, I lived, I learned from those mistakes, and I was able to move forward. And that's why I wrote the book, to encourage other single women to give dating advice based on my experience personally and professionally, and also to encourage them that it's okay to be single and be living your best life. You are not in a rest stop. You are living. You are not waiting, but you are actually living during this time in your life. And in the end, when you do work on developing the skills that you need, you can be successful in dating and meet the person that you really want to meet.
Well, everyone's got to pick up a copy of Judge Faith Jenkins, her new book, Sis Don't Settle. And be sure to catch Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins. It airs Sundays with new episodes at 7, 6 Central on the Oxygen Network. Judge Faith, thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. It was a pleasure to get to meet you, and thank you for a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. We were the highest rated show this past Sunday on Oxygen. So we are going into our third week. I would love for everyone to just keep tuning in and keep watching and keep learning, because we're really using this show as a tool also to create awareness.
Absolutely. It's such an educational program. Congratulations to you. That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. And I'm going to continue watching. I hope you guys will as well. Killer Relationships with Faith Jenkins, Sunday, 7, 6 Central. You take care and have a great day, Judge Faith. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you.